Well, on the bright side, at least she did not take his hat. Well, guys, I just left the theater, and of course, this video right here is being done at roughly 1 o'clock in the morning. I guess it would be Saturday morning. This video, by the way, will be coming out sometime probably right around 1 or 2 o'clock in the afternoon tomorrow. I typically tend not to post videos anymore as an event occurs, but I'm going to try to be as fair, as honest, and I'm going to try to be as, let's just say I'm going to try to be as open about this film, give you guys my honest feelings, just a few nitpicks here and there, and obviously there are going to be some spoilers. Now, before I get started on this, I want to go ahead and say this. For a film that's got a $300 million budget, I don't see this film making back the budget itself. I don't even see this film breaking even. It's possible that it could. Obviously, it's opening up to very low scores. The Rotten Tomatoes score, which, by the way, you would figure would actually bolster this film, has actually been pretty low. I'm waiting for the audience score to come out. I want to give it a few days rather than the initial viewing before I actually say anything. But there are some positives to this film, but there's obviously some negatives too. So therefore, it made this particular picture not good, yet not awful, but yet at the same time, though, there were awful things in the film, but yet there were also good things in the film. So for the most part, it was just a good old-fashioned meh. But let me go ahead and throw this out here. It's very possible that this film right here, say if it did not have Phoebe Waller-Bridge in it, it's very possible that this film right here may have actually netted Disney some cash because, as I said before, it was mostly meh rather than god-awful. I have my own tier system of actual films: god-awful, insufferable, meh, then it was okay, and then you have good, and then outstanding, exceptional. I would say it was more the meh category, right below average or right below decent. That's exactly what the hell was going on with this film, and I think for the most part they probably should have maybe left it alone after Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, but for whatever reason Disney needs that extra bit of money, and it looks to me like Disney's going to lose money as a result of this film. So guys, go ahead and grab yourself a drink because we're going to be here for a minute. I know I told you guys that I was going to quit drinking, but here I am. This drink ain't too bad, actually. So, where to start at? So, basically the film starts in 1945 as World War II is ending. There's a nice little scene at the very beginning where Indy actually gets himself hung at the very beginning. Very, very much Indiana Jones-esque, gets himself into some trouble. It leads to a train sequence. They're actually looking for the Spear of Longius, which, by the way, the Germans were, in fact, looking for artifacts all throughout World War II. And the Spear of Longius, the Spear of Destiny, is actually a very, very interesting story. I advise you guys to go check it out. I think I'll leave a couple of links in the description box, maybe even a couple of YouTube videos as well. Very, very fascinating stuff. Spear of Destiny, by the way, is the spear that was used to pierce the side of Jesus Christ during the crucifixion. I just figured I'd go ahead and throw that out there. And Adolf Hitler was obsessed with this type of stuff. Charlemagne also had his hands on the spear at one point in time too, and of course they find out the spear is a fake. It basically leads to a chase, and of course the villain, who's played by Mads Mikkelsen, he comes across Archimedes' Dial of Destiny, or whatever you might want to call it. Of course, the film is called The Dial of Destiny, so I guess we can go ahead and call it that. That's kind of how forgettable certain segments of this film were. It was actually a little bit boring, but like I said before, it was more meh than bad. It definitely wasn't great. So time goes on. Of course, the de-aging portion of this particular movie, where they de-aged Harrison Ford, you can tell there's a lot of CGI in there. It's not bad CGI. It's actually pretty solid for the most part. The problem is that sometimes Harrison Ford's actual 80-year-old voice does come out, so you guys will be able to hear it if you decide to go watch this film. So after the entire first portion is over with, now, really quick, the first act of this film, or at least the first 45 minutes of this film, was actually quite intriguing, even though it was a little bit depressing seeing Indy basically be an old drunk, find out that his wife is divorcing him, find out that his son has died in Vietnam. Yeah, the first 45 minutes, even though it's a little bit depressing, is actually a little bit intriguing. Now, Phoebe Waller-Bridge, if this film was designed to be her playing just a good old-fashioned nerdy girl, like young girl, who's fascinated by things, very, very open, very, very curious about things, then she probably would have actually been okay. Now, a lot of people have complained about Phoebe Waller-Bridge. She's not really funny. She's very, very much a feminist. But she makes the film quite insufferable from this point on, that right there being the initial 45 to 50 minutes. It makes you think, of course, with the first chase scene, which I actually thought the first action sequence was actually pretty good. Indy is riding on a horse trying to get away from these Nazis, Mads Mikkelsen's. His motivations are somewhat alluded to at the very beginning in a scene inside of a cafe. I'm going to kind of leave that part blank for the time being, but for the most part, when the plot picks up, for whatever reason, after the first hour, it just kind of dies right there and it turns into a bit of a slog. There was an action sequence that occurred, I think it was in Tangier, that was very, very long, a little bit too long. It was a driving sequence. Now, me personally, I don't have a problem with long action sequences, especially if they're car chases, as long as they actually do stuff during the actual car chase. As long as it's actually intriguing, I don't have a problem with it. But it seems to me that the chases in this particular film just went on a little bit too long. Before I get back to the initial part of the plot, there's one very, very quick nitpick. If you've ever been a fan of the Indiana Jones series, then you will obviously know the sound effect of the Indiana Jones punch. That was dropped for some odd reason. In this particular movie, for whatever reason, they dropped the punch. I have no idea why the hell they did that. I just figure I'd throw that at them. I mean, I know it's a nitpick, but I mean, you can't have an Indiana Jones film without this particular sound. And one more thing, too, before somebody comes in here and says, well, you just don't like a strong, independent woman. Let me tell you something, guy, quick, all right? In 1996, at the age of 11, I bought Tomb Raider. I played as Lara Croft. One of my favorite film sequels is directed by James Cameron. And no, I'm not talking about Terminator 2, and I'm not talking about Sarah Connor from Terminator 1. I'm talking about Sigourney Weaver, Ellen Ripley's character from Aliens. That right there is the actual archetype that you may want to look for when you look for a strong female protagonist, that type of thing right there. Just saying, okay? So that way I want to go ahead and get that out of the way, so that way the SJWs and the crowd don't come over here and say I got triggered by some lady or whatnot. I think it was mostly just the fact that they probably gave Phoebe Waller-Bridge a role that, quite frankly, she probably shouldn't have had. But still, though. And, of course, this whole aggravating sequence kicks off with her locking him inside the university basement. People get killed in there by the villains. What it basically makes you think of is it makes you think that Indy is being framed for murder. And so it actually seems like it might actually be an extremely intriguing plot at that particular point in time. Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character in the film is apparently Indy's goddaughter. I mean, like I said, there are certain segments of this film that are completely forgettable. For example, Toby Jones's character, his name is completely forgettable. Like I said, I'm going completely off the cuff. I just left the movie theater like not even 30 minutes ago. But still, the thing is this right here. The entire second act just turns into a bit of a slog, and it takes forever to get to the main point. Now, on a positive side, the film did have Antonio Banderas, and it did have Jonathan Rhys-Davies in it. Sallah was in the film, and the very, very brief portions of the film that Sallah was in, it was actually quite great. Antonio Banderas, on the other hand, anytime Antonio Banderas is in a movie, you need to utilize him because he's very good. He's always comical. He's always funny. And even when he's serious, he's still very good. For whatever reason, they didn't want to use him. And speaking of using, I got to go ahead and say this right here. One of the things that hurts this film, especially seeing how it's supposed to be an Indiana Jones film, is that it confuses you into thinking that maybe it is an Indiana Jones film, but it feels to me like maybe it's more of a Phoebe Waller-Bridge movie. Yeah, and one of the main reasons why this is the case is that there is a certain section in the movie where Indy says, "You need me to get there," because her character is just so great without him that she does not need him. When it's pretty obvious, the more and more and more you look at it, you think, okay, this film's supposed to be about Indiana Jones, so why don't you make it about Indiana Jones? She just seems like she's way too far ahead of him. This is not a case where the two characters learn from one another. It just feels to me like Indiana is wanting to be used to get a hold of this particular artifact. Now, towards the end of the movie, you find out pretty quick when they actually get to the cave to go find the actual Dial of Destiny itself, the full bit, because apparently there's only like half of the pieces there, and then they got to find the other half. But when you actually get to the actual sequence where they go inside of a cave, inside of an actual tunnel, Indiana Jones actually becomes Indiana Jones. For that very, very brief moment in time, he takes the lead, and quite frankly, it was very nice to see. I mean, there are some moments in this film that are very, very Indiana Jones-esque, like, for example, that trademark charm of getting in over his head, things like that right there. There are small slices, small tidbit moments in there. Of course, Harrison Ford's in his 80s now, so therefore it's probably going to be a little bit fewer and far between. Then, of course, you get towards the actual end of the film. Now, really quick, the very, very end of the movie, like the last 7 minutes of the film, or last 5 minutes of the film, I guess, is actually pretty touching and actually pretty good. And I'll go ahead and reveal that here in a second. But the thing is this right here. The villains in this film are not very bright. Apparently, what they do is the guy who was the main villain, played by Mads Mikkelsen, who, by the way, is also a very good actor himself, didn't really get a whole lot of actual screen time. Phoebe Waller-Bridge, of course, the range, of course. Like I said, if they had made it more her just being that nerdy, geeky type, it probably would have worked. But they basically gave her a lead role and basically gave her too much screen time. And, of course, she came off as extremely smug and absolutely insufferable. Maybe that is what they were actually looking for, but at the same time, I don't think it works in an Indiana Jones film. It feels to me like maybe they may have tried to emasculate him a little bit more than what we thought they were initially going to do, especially seeing how Steven Spielberg and George Lucas were producers and not actively involved in the actual filming of the movie itself, more supervisory roles. But the thing is this right here. When you actually get towards the end and you find out that the villains who completely screwed things up, they wanted to go back in time to World War II, like right before the invasion of Poland, and they wanted to basically knock off Hitler because, well, Hitler was an idiot and he actually ruined, which, thank God he was an idiot, all right, thank God he was an idiot, but still at the same time, obviously an extremely evil man. This guy right here basically said, look, if I had been running Germany at the time of World War II, we would have conquered the world by now. The Third Reich would be absolutely everywhere. That's basically what it is, him trying to go back and change the past. And of course, they even screw up and they end up, instead of going back to, I think it was Munich is where they were trying to go to, they end up landing in ancient Rome right around 214 BC. They actually go that far back in time. When given the opportunity, and by the way, Indy was shot in the left side of his chest. When given the opportunity to go back home, Indy did not want to go back home. Indy wanted to stay in Rome, where actually it was in Sicily. It was during the siege of Sicily. He wanted to stay there with Archimedes. Then out of the middle of nowhere, Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character punches him in the face, knocks him out. He wakes up in Chicago in his apartment, where she has basically nursed him back to health. And his ex-wife, or his about-to-be ex-wife, played by Lori Allen, Marion Ravenwood, suddenly shows up with Sala, and everything is all nice and all touching and everything. And the film ends on a very touching note with her leaving the apartment, that right there being Phoebe Waller-Bridge, and then a scene going to his apartment with the hat hanging outside. Screen turns to black, circles right on the hat. It ends on a very, very nice note. For the most part, this film, like I said, was just pretty well meh. It's going to lose Disney a lot of money, especially given the fact that $300 million was put into this film for it, of course, to be mostly CGI. I understand Harrison Ford is 80 years old, but still at the same time, though, I do think that the people at Disney could have done a little bit better when making this film, and it seems to me like this part is just going to be a completely unforgettable film, a footnote in what was a pretty iconic character and a pretty well iconic saga. Those right there are my initial views on this film. Now, as far as the future is concerned, and one of my subs asked me this question earlier in the day, and I actually almost forgot to put this in here. As far as this franchise is concerned, would I go further with any more movies or reboot or anything? No, I would not do anything. Let it stand the way it is. Just leave it the hell alone. It seemed to me like they were trying to launch Phoebe Waller-Bridge's character as like the next Indiana Jones, and a lot of people online basically alluded to that. That was what they were trying to do. I don't think I actually picked up on that. Maybe it's possible that that was the original ending at Cannes, but it seems to me like they may have changed that. I mean, the character that she plays is Indy's goddaughter. So, I mean, I didn't really pick up on that. It felt like they were going to go in that direction. Basically, what I'm saying is that it looked like they were going in that direction to try to elevate her until the very, very end of the movie after she punched him in the face. And then, of course, she's in the apartment with him. It just felt to me like they may have wanted to go in that direction, but for whatever reason, may have aborted at the end. Maybe I need to go back and watch it a second time. I'm not sure. By the way, if I watch a film, I normally watch it a second time anyways, just to get a better understanding of the source material, even if it was a bad film or meh. Yes, I am like that. I am meticulous like that, and especially when we start doing video essays where we start comparing today's society to actual certain films and what was the message of those films were and how it impacts society. Trust me, there's going to be a lot of rewatches of that particular film because obviously watching that film, reading the director's notes, reading the writing material, reading the script, all that type of stuff will, of course, go into these eventual video essays. Like, for example, I'm working on one that's about American Psycho. And, of course, the theme I'm going to be talking about is collective identity and consumerism because right now we live in we live in a society that seems to be more consumeristic rather than it is capitalistic. And obviously reading Bret Easton Ellis's book twice and watching that film on multiple occasions, a film that, quite frankly, is one of my favorite films, I would obviously understand a great deal of the source material and actually understand the actual underlying message of the film. A lot like Fight Club, which, by the way, is another one I'm planning on exploring, especially when we talk about the loss of masculinity. Basically, this film right here to me tells me that they should not try anything, not even a prequel series or a reboot series. If you wanted to do that there, then maybe what you should have done was maybe brought back Shia LaBeouf and had it been a father-son adventure, a lot like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. You could have done that there, or hell, you could have even changed the actors. I mean, there would have been at least a good 15 to 16 year exchange, or at least age gap. I mean, at least as far as his son aging, of course, would be like in his early 30s. Of course, this right dates back to Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, which, by the way, I still, for the most part, have no idea why they wanted to make it so depressing. And even in the first act, which, by the way, was pretty good, it felt to me like they were going in that more of that thriller type thing where Indy is on the run. He's a fugitive for the most part because of her. Because it is because of her that he even gets this entire situation to begin with. Which, by the way, is another reason why she was so freaking insufferable. And, of course, just got to give you one last thing. I leave the theater. I go to the bathroom. I stay outside. I wait for a little bit. I didn't hear any cheers or anything like that. Typically, when you don't hear any cheers or whatnot, it seems like the audience either A, may have been bored throughout the entire film, or they have extremely mixed feelings, or they may actually have felt that it was bad. It's not like, say, Top Gun Maverick, where I walk out of the theater and people are cheering, they're happy, they're smiling. Guardians of the Galaxy 3 didn't really leave much of an impression either, so I'm kind of thinking that there's exactly how it was received. I understand it's one viewing. It's a small theater setting. Of course, there's only about maybe 10 or 15 people in there with you. But then again, at the same time, though, based upon this particular film's initial money-making or the initial box office, I don't see how the hell Disney is going to be able to recoup this money. Of course, it's got to do with two reasons. Number one, the film really wasn't that good. Like I said, it was meh for the most part. I've said that a lot. And, of course, Disney's reputation for producing woke crap has probably deadened this film because people already had the expectations that they were probably going to kill this character off. Now, me personally, I was actually glad to see that they didn't actually kill Indiana Jones. But then again, at the same time, though, they definitely embarrassed, emasculated, and made him the backseat character for a good portion of this film. All right, and that's really the thoughts I have on Indiana Jones going forward. Don't make any more films. Don't do anything else. Just leave it as it is. One of my subs, by the way, pointed this out to me in the comment section in the video that I made yesterday about why it was that this film will ultimately flop, which apparently it will. He basically asserted what I had asserted in the previous video about the topics of Disney Pictures, is that because of all the political nature and crap, it's automatically going to be stained as it is, meaning that the company name is stained. So people are automatically going to assume that because Disney made it, it's probably going to have some political, social justice warrior stuff in there. Outside of the whole this is capitalism, and of course the annoyance that is Phoebe Waller-Bridge, I would say it wasn't so much woke or anything like that. I would just say that it was insufferable on that level there. I didn't see a whole lot of SJW stuff in it, but then again, at the same time, though, I have to watch it a second time. Now, would I advise you guys go watch this film? If you want to go watch this film, if you want to spend your money, go right ahead and do so. I don't think it's worth the $20 ticket price to go watch the movie, but if you guys want to actually go watch the film, by all means, go right ahead and do so. If you want to purchase this film to finish off your Indiana Jones collection, by all means, go right ahead and do it. I own all four, so don't be surprised that once the price drops, that I don't buy this particular DVD when it does come out on DVD for the sole purposes of actually ripping it to my computer and maybe doing a look back on it later on in the future. However, it's not like I'm doing this for actual pleasure or anything, but because I actually want to. I thought the film, for the most part, was just good old-fashioned, just meh. It wasn't nothing special. It wasn't great. And if anything, even though the ending of the film was quite touching and the first act was good and I saw where they were actually going, or initially where I thought they were going, for the most part, I think that this movie completely missed the mark. Guys, with that right there being said, I'm going to go ahead and close down for the night. Make sure you guys hit that like button. Make sure you guys subscribe. Make sure you guys share the video. If like I said, if you want to go watch the movie, go right ahead and do that. I'm just giving you guys my honest thoughts at 1 o'clock in the morning. Well, now it's 1:45 because I've had a lot of cuts, a lot of jump cuts in this video to try to get things right, doing this completely unscripted. I hope you guys have a good night. Like I said, this video will be out tomorrow. If you think I've earned your subscription, please hit that subscribe button. Also, leave a comment in the comment section. I'll see you guys later.